This is a really historic kind of story. So Dracula was originally created as a character in the novel by Bram Stoker in like the 1890s. There's over 200 adaptations of Dracula, whether it's Nosferatu or otherwise, but the silent film Nosferatu that came out in 1922 is one of the biggest examples. And sound wasn't even added to movies until I believe 1927-ish. What? That's crazy. I'll be 100% honest with you guys. I'll lay it on the line. I wasn't even sure Transylvania was a real place until reading this. I'm gonna have to click on this link. Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu, Count Orlok. How have I not really talked about that yet? I mean, he's so good in this movie, transformed like he is in so many of his roles. Welcome to Backseat Directing, where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew, here today without Aaron, and today I will be filming an episode on a solo review for the movie Nosferatu. 3, 2, 1, action. So today I'm here without Aaron. He didn't get the chance to see Nosferatu, but I'm going to go ahead and cover a solo review for you guys so you can hear my thoughts on the newest adaptation of Nosferatu. So this is a really historic kind of story. So Dracula was originally created as a character in the novel by Bram Stoker in like the 1890s. And he's had over 200 adaptations on the screen since then. Now, there is a slight difference from what I can tell in my Google research on the difference between Nosferatu and Dracula. Nosferatu is the character we see in this movie, who is also known as Count Orlok. They have a few notable differences for them. They're different iterations of the origin of the vampire myth, but one of the main things I could find was that Dracula is traditionally weakened by sunlight, whereas Nosferatu is killed by sunlight. So there's just basic differences in the lore of the two characters. For example, in this movie, it's divulged that there's one of the rules for Nosferatu that every night he has to return to sleep in the coffin where he was buried. So if he remains out of that coffin, and also, huge spoilers ahead, by the way, for Nosferatu. I'm getting right into it. I apologize. You know what? I gotta slow myself down. But spoilers ahead for Nosferatu. I'm going to be going kind of in-depth into the movie and talking about the story and what I liked and maybe some small critiques that I have about Nosferatu as well. So the brief overview, the film Nosferatu came out obviously this year in December 2024. It's a 2 hours and 12 long R-rated horror movie that's directed and written by Robert Eggers. Like I mentioned, they did give credits for the creation of the character of Dracula to Bram Stoker, and then it is also giving credit to the author of Nosferatu, a previous Nosferatu film, Henrik Galeen. And I believe that's for the writing of the 1992 version. Like I said, there's over 200 adaptations of Dracula, whether it's Nosferatu or otherwise, but the silent film Nosferatu that came out in 1922 is one of the biggest examples, and sound wasn't even added to movies until I believe 1927-ish. The late 1920s is when they added sound into movies and started putting feature-length films with actual sound design, which is actually a high strength of this movie. This movie has incredible sound design. And I'm just not just talking about the music, which was amazing, but if you pay close attention to the actual sounds, the guttural blood-sucking of Nosferatu, or even the skipping of cobblestones, or the sounds of splashing as Nicholas Holt's Thomas falls into water, the sounds have a crispness to them that really are great for horror, because there's like I said, that visceral, guttural blood sucking, the crisp nature of the sounds really makes you feel every bit of sound design. It makes you kind of crawl and squirm in your chair, because sound is a really inherent part of horror. You know, our senses are really attuned to sound in terms of the sense of danger. And something we've talked a lot about on the show is how horror is a really cool genre because it taps into one of our body's most basic emotions, which is fear, and the kind of evolutionary need for fear. So our bodies kind of, in a sense, seek that out because it's so evolutionary. It's something that our bodies have to be trained and attuned to in terms of survival for thousands of years. So that's, I think, part of why we as a society love horror movies so much. I mean, when I went to see this movie, the theater, although it was a small theater for this, it was, not as many seats. I was in one of my local theaters with a less seating opportunity, it was packed. It was full, which I have not seen for a lot of movies lately. But I do tend to see opening weekend of horror movies that a lot of people come out. Like Heretic, there was a lot of people seated as well. So I think people get really excited when these horror movies come out. And Robert Eggers does have a great cult following. People love his movies. If you're not familiar with his work, he also is writer and director for The Lighthouse, The Northman, um, and I believe another notable one that I'm forgetting besides Nosferatu as well, The Witch. The Witch was his debut film. And then um, he's bringing people along with him because his cinematographer and I believe the composer for this movie are both people he worked with before. His cinematographer, I have to give huge props to for this movie. Let's just go ahead and go through all the people that are working on this movie behind the scenes. We talked about Robert Eggers as writer and director. And then music was done by Robin Carolyn. Cinematography, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, Jarin Blaschke. Sorry, Jaron Yarn, if I mispronounce your name, but I can't say enough good things about your work on this film. The cinematography is absolutely just mind blowing. This is one of my favorite, best looking movies of the year in terms of the visual qualities. This is kind of a spoiler because we're going to do our Oscars episode for backseat directing later in the year when we get closer to March and April, the Oscar season, you know, for the actual Oscars. But I would have to nominate this movie for cinematography. It might be my favorite looking movie in terms of visuals all year. I made a TikTok recently about how my three best looking movies for the year are Alien Romulus, Nosferatu, and Dune Part 2. And this movie, I think, is the only thing that's really given Dune Part 2 a true run for its money in my eyes, because just the beautiful work that Jarin did, gorgeous cinematography, the lighting, the way, and then in the edit as well, which is part of what we roll into of the visuals and cinematography of the film when we do our ratings on the show. They also have a cool blend of color and black and white film, which also feels like an homage to the 1922 origins of Nosferatu in terms of cinema, because that movie was filmed in black and white as well. I don't know particularly the reasoning. Like there was a lot of debate over Oppenheimer's reasoning for changing, black and white to color. I don't know the reasoning behind the black and white scenes in this movie, but other than it just looked great, when they would do it, and then when they removed that aspect and flooded the color back onto the screen, it looked great as well. But it was just cool, unique, creative choices, and it didn't bother me at all in the film. It may have something to do with Dracula with Nosferatu and his powers being related to shadows, because that's a huge part of the film as well. And when he is present, I do think that when his harrowing presence is involved, there is that black and white, like that iconic shot in the film, which I think will come to be iconic, I should say. But as Dracula is reaching out over the city, I think it's Thusberg, maybe, his shadow of his hand sprawls out across this small city, and that whole scene's in black and white. So maybe that's part of the justification, maybe not. May have to take a second closer look at the film and watch it again before I make, statements like that. But the editing was done by Louise Ford, and overall, these technical aspects of the film are just really strong. So my applause go out to all these people who worked on the other side of the camera. Let's look at our cast as well while we're on the IMDb page. The main star of the film, in my eyes, is Ellen Hutter, played by Lily Rose Depp, and then Nicholas Hoult plays her husband, Thomas Hutter. Bill Skarsgård plays the iconic Count Orlok, aka the titular character Nosferatu. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson as Friedrich Harding, Willem Dafoe as Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz. I did have a hard time getting some of these characters' names understood during the movie because there's a lot of accents and they're odd names to my American ear. But then Emma Corrin plays Anna Harding, the wife of Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, and Ralph Ineson plays Dr. Wilhelm Sievers, who is a huge part of this movie as well. Simon McBurney is Knock, and man, if Knock isn't a crazy character to be playing this movie, possibly the craziest. Count Orlok has some really wild scenes as well. But if you haven't watched the movie, you'll see when you watch it that Knock just has some unbelievably uncomfortable scenes, and one of his earliest scenes too, he's just completely nude, sitting on basically a pentagram on the floor, sitting on the seal of Nosferatu. So that just gives you an idea of how kind of out there his scenes are. But everybody involved did such a good job in this movie. But I feel like the real highlight was the visual. Then the sound was amazing, and the score was great as well. The score created a lot of dread, and it had a really intense feel to it. I tried to pay attention to the score, especially in the second half of the film, because there really would be kind of a tonal shift in the Orlok scenes that I feel like Orlok had a really incredible theme. The music was really powerful, which, like I said, is an important part of horror. But the set and production design in this movie too deserves an insane round of applause. I could see it getting Oscar nominations here as well. I'll talk about the performances here in a moment too, after I talk about the production and set design. But the I don't know where they found these locations. As soon as they walked outside in the movie, there's one of the opening scenes is um, Thomas and his wife, played by Lily Rose Depp, Emma. They're sitting on the bed talking, and Thomas has to leave to go to work. They go outside, and I leaned over to my fiancee Sierra, and I said, um, "Why are they shooting in Diagon Alley?" It looked like you stepped into another world, the same way that it feels in Harry Potter, because it's this really historic cobblestone streets, very, the buildings look of a completely different time, and it sprawls out for lengths across different locations. I don't know if I might look at their filming location if I can find it here on IMDb while I'm recording here, talking to you guys, to see if I can get that information for you, because it was just absolutely stunning. Every interior was gorgeous, filled with so much light, and I'm sorry, filled with so much depth. Sometimes, honestly, a lack of light. I don't know why the word light came to my mind, because sometimes there was a lack of light in the interiors, which I don't think played poorly. I think it really helped draw your focus to the face of the actor, because that was always well lit. Sometimes the backgrounds kind of disappeared to give you this feeling that you're just sitting there with the emotion of the actor, whether it's the devastation or the fear, which were the two big emotions of the film, because they're going through the fear of Thomas never coming back, the fear of this demon that seems to be haunting Emma's character, and not knowing how to help her or what to do. So it's a very intense movie emotionally. Let's see. Countries of origin: United States, United Kingdom, and Hungary. Filming location: Corvin Castle, Transylvania region, Romania. What? That's crazy. I'll be 100% honest with you guys. I'll lay it on the line. I wasn't even sure Transylvania was a real place until reading this. I'm gonna have to click on this link. What? Where is Transylvania? We're gonna find this out together. I mean, maybe you already know. Maybe I'm just an idiot. Um, yeah. Oh, well, I guess I definitely am an idiot because it said Romania. So yeah, they went to Europe and filmed scenes in Romania, like IMDb already told me. But wow, that's incredible. They filmed at Corvin Castle, so at a real castle for, I assume, for the estate of Count Orlok, which was just this beautiful castle with like a stone bridge leading up to it and running water nearby, and this beautiful, gorgeous mountain landscape area. They shot them so beautifully. I mean, the ultra wides in this movie were stunning, to say the least. I mean, it was like a gorgeous feast for the eyes, especially the wide shots. I mean, there's a shot of an uphill climb for Thomas's character as he loses his horse and he's journeying towards Count Orlok's mansion, and it's just this beautiful wide of the snowy landscape with gorgeous trees and mountains in the background. I mean, it's the kind of place that makes you want to go there in real life. And then the castle looks gorgeous, and there's another great wide when Thomas is on his journey. Prior to that, he first gets a look at this little settlement of gypsies, and there's just a wide expanse of terrain, just blanketed in snow, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I don't know how many times I'm using the same adjectives right now, but um, I just can't get across how nice it was to look at throughout the film. And it's not just because they picked these great locations, which was due to is that's a part of it, but it's also just the way that they shot it, like the lighting in terms. One of the scenes that sticks out to me is just as he's about to approach the mansion, Thomas is getting close to Nosferatu's castle, and he's in this alleyway of trees. And that scene is shot in black and white, and snow is falling, and it's just so dark, but just the right amount of light to see the details of the scenery, and the character of Thomas is backlit and silhouetted. And in that scene, this like empty carriage comes up and trots up, opens the door to him for him to get in. It's like a dream sequence, because the way it's shot is you just get these minimal details the way you would in a dream. Like, I don't know how it is for you guys, but if I'm dreaming, it's not very fine-tuned detail. I couldn't like look at somebody's wristwatch and see the time. It's just more general shapes and colors. And If you picked at the details too much, the dream would kind of fall apart. But that's what they talk about with Nosferatu, is he kind of draws you into this waking dream sequence, especially when the empty chariot rolls up and nobody's in it, and it opens the door on its own, beckoning him in to come on into the mansion seductively, trying to draw him into Nosferatu's spell. It really feels like a dream. They do such a good job of telling the story visually in that way throughout the movie. Now, it does, to me, later on in the story, it does run long, but it's really buffeted on the winds of these incredible performances and visuals. Like, it'll keep you awake throughout the movie. I watched the movie. It was getting to be 9 o'clock, between 9 and 10 as the movie was ending, and I was honestly starting to yawn and get tired. But for me, the story doesn't really drive this movie. It's more the visuals and the characters within the story. Because the ultimate climax of the way that they defeat Nosferatu is, it's fairly simple, right? It's just that Emma tricks him into staying out past the rise of the sun, past the crow of the first rooster. But like, I mean, that's not all that crazy. I keep saying Emma. Her name is Ellen. Ellen Hutter. Ellen. So it's a fairly simple way to defeat him. Like, they try to go and take out the corpse of Dracula, but the only one who can beat him in Willem Dafoe's eyes is Emma. So Ellen. I did it again. Is Ellen. So she draws him into, her bedroom and seduces him to stay out past the rise of the sun, and this kills him. Which is, it's the traditional. There's a few traditional ways to kill Dracula or Nosferatu. I mean, what do you? They're going to tell the same story. This is a story that goes back to 1890, and then a lot of things have been inspired and adapted from this. So it feels like maybe it's something we've seen before, but that's not a bad thing because they're staying true to the original source material. We've seen things going as far as superhero comic book heroes like Blade having these similar sunlight weaknesses. Not Blade himself because he's half human, but the characters in the villains in that story as well. So much has been drawn from it that it's hard to tell the original story and not feel kind of expected in a sense. So, I mean, that isn't what necessarily kept me drawn into this movie, though. I have to compliment the visuals, the set design, and the acting. And now I'll finally touch on the acting that I said I would talk about later. Everybody delivers on such a strong front in this movie. I would maybe fine tune a little bit of the enunciation if I could make one small complaint. Willem Dafoe does a great job with the enunciation. I can understand everything Willem Dafoe's said, but I would have liked to hear characters' names a little bit more in the first act of the movie. I feel like we heard Friedrich's name a decent amount, and I knew his name, but there were some characters whose names I was forgetting. I wanted to know Thomas's last name, but then maybe they feel like they didn't have to do that because it's such an iconic story. Maybe it's my fault for not having read a book that's 200 years old that I would know all their names. Maybe I'm just behind on my literature, but these are iconic characters in history, so they don't probably feel the need to do something like that. They feel like they don't need to express that to us. We know, or you should. A lot of people probably know Orlok and Emma Hutter and Ellen Hutter and Thomas Hutter. Geez, there's going to have to be a compilation of how many times I've messed up her name. Ellen Hutter, Thomas Hutter, Friedrich, I believe Harding, and then his wife as well. So yeah, maybe that doesn't need to even be a complaint, but that I just found myself feeling that during the movie, like wanting to know everybody's name and hear things a little bit more clearly to know like the details, because it is a little bit poetic and Shakespearean in terms of some of the dialogue. Not full on Shakespearean, but there is a little bit of a different dialect used because of the movie taking place in an earlier time period, which I can appreciate because I feel like that did help me transport to that time period. But at the same time, it did make me a little bit confused on completely understanding everything that was said in terms of the dialogue. But the performances drove home so much. I mean, a few key moments I can think of, that teary-eyed moment of Nicholas Holt's character Thomas when he's coming to the realization that he might be in the presence of a monster as he's meeting Count Orlok. That expression of fear on his face is extremely believable and draws you into your own fear of the moment. He did a great performance, but I still think that by far my favorite performance of the movie has to go to Lily Rose Depp. And if she's not nominated for Best Actress for this movie, I will be blown away and insulted for her because she is so skilled, so talented. The physical performance that she delivers in this movie is almost unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, convulsions and possession and contortions of the face, the mouth, the tongue, really making full use of her physical acting and her body in the movie. is just phenomenal. I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's the only performance this year that I would put on par with Timothy Chalamet's performance in Dune, which I thought was amazing. I've seen a lot of movies from this year. Um, yeah, I thought it was really amazing. I think her, and then I think it's Mikey Madison for Honora would be a great addition to the nominations. And then the only person who I think gives her a run for her money for my personal choice for Best Actress is Zendaya in Challengers, because I think her as Tashi Duncan was absolutely amazing, and she embodied that character so fully. And I will not forget the name Tashi Duncan because I'm a Duncanator at this point. But Lily Rose Depp gives an amazing performance in this movie. That scene, especially when she is being possessed, the scene when she's contorting as they're trying to hold her down um, from being, you know, from not hurting herself, and then the scene where she is, you know, walking back and forth across the room as the camera kind of pans with her, and she's delivering her little monologue to Thomas, Nicholas Holt's character. That is the highlight peak of acting in the film for me. She really dug deep into that character and tapped into something, completely otherworldly and amazing. So my flowers go to her. I think she did such a great job. And then the other best performance in this movie that I think comes in right near Lily Rose Depp, honestly, because this is some of my favorite performances of the year, is Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu, Count Orlok. How have I not really talked about that yet? I mean, he's so good in this movie, transformed like he is in so many of his roles. And I can't applaud him enough for his acting choices, for his role choices, because he takes such unique, bold roles. I mean, for this movie, from what no, actually, this is from a clip with Bill Skarsgård, so I can directly quote this because it's true. He was originally going to be cast as Thomas, which is Nicholas Holt's character. The movie got shut down, or not shut down, but the movie had some issues, and then Robert Eggers went on to do The Lighthouse instead. And when they came back, Robert Eggers had cast Nicholas Holt as Thomas, so that part was no longer there for Bill Skarsgård. Then Bill Skarsgård wanted to play Friedrich, which is Aaron Taylor Johnson's part, and Eggers came back basically with, well, what if you played Nosferatu instead? And Skarsgård said he was like, what, Nosferatu? But I don't know why he would be surprised, because that seems like a perfectly fitting role for Skarsgård. I mean, he's played Pennywise in It, and I feel like he's used to being covered in prosthetics from that, make tons of makeup like he was with Orlok, and embodying a completely different, not even a completely different person, but a completely different entity, like a monster. Like Pennywise, excuse me, that was terrible. Pennywise embodies some alien spirit that is the personification of fear, basically. So like a whole entity, and then Dracula, they throughout this movie, Nosferatu, Dracula, they identify him not just as a vampire, but kind of as like the personification of death or a demon or the personification of evil. And so it's so much more than just playing another person, possibly even more than playing a monster, to play an entity like this. Because, he kind of, when you first see him in that kind of dazed dream state of Nicholas Holt, he's kind of wafting in and out, almost gliding like a ghost in and out of different sides of the table, tossing, dropping out of the scene and then appearing back into the scene to where he feels like this otherworldly presence. And it's so phenomenal the way they filmed that. I imagine they'd have to be using doubles. They don't really show the full face anyway, so it'd be a lot easier to use doubles to film that. But a lot of long continuous shots in the movie to help keep you in scenes like that. Lengthy shots, lengthy shots with camera movement. Like there's a shot when Nicholas Holt first comes into the shop where he works, or the agency where he works, and the shot lets him walk from far across the room into focus in the frame, and then he turns to his right and walks into another room, and the camera trucks along with him toward the left into the room. Lengthy shots that help keep you in the film. Or even that conversation I mentioned where they're sitting on bed, Ellen and Thomas, it like comes up with her as she wakes up, and then it trucks to the left to, put them both in frame, Thomas and Ellen, for their conversation. So I love camera movement like that. This movie does great moments, having the camera dolly in really far and focus up on the what would you call that? It's the placard that says the name of the business when Thomas first goes to work. But just so much cool camera movement in this. And one thing I love is lengthy shots. Lengthy shots feels like a recognition of old Hollywood. Like when I watched 12 Angry Men, that movie opens with an insanely long shot. And Hollywood used to film their movies kind of almost like a play, where scenes would be really long And now the average length of a shot, I believe, is somewhere between 4 and 10 seconds. Shots are really quick in modern Hollywood, and it in ways it makes it easier to control because there's so many elements in terms of lighting and things that you want to control that a short shot you can kind of cut and then do a new setup. Um, but they tend to do it really seamlessly, but still I like that feeling of being in the movie and feeling in the scene with the actors, where the actors are, and I feel like that probably helps the actors too, because they get to deliver all the emotion and the dialogue without kind of all those breaks and cuts for new setups. So I felt that the benefits of that in this movie, and I feel like it was really strong. What did I cut away from that I was talking about so long ago now? Talking about Bill Skarsgård's performance as I really tangented there from Bill Skarsgård's performance as Orlok, but I feel like he's completely transformed. I feel like if you just showed me the movie and didn't tell me he was cast in it, I wouldn't even guess it was him, other than the only chance I would have is some of the close-ups where you can see his eyes, because he has pretty distinctive, that sunken in eyes. Um, but I mean, the mustache completely hides and shrouds his face. An interesting addition to the character. I don't totally know how I feel about it. I think overall, I'd have to say I don't love the addition of the mustache. I know people have been talking back and forth on it. I wish that it wasn't so distracting. That's what I wish. The mustache just, whenever I looked at him, I was thinking, look at that mustache. I was kind of distracted a little bit from the performance, a little bit from the visual of the character. Um, but it did help hide the person and help kind of have me not think of him as Bill Skarsgård, because he's got this big cloak on a lot of the time, mostly shrouded in shrouded in shadows. I did really like the way he looked on that one poster where he almost looks like the Grim Reaper. He has like this cloak on, it's covering his face, and his face is just a shadow, but you see the long fingers. The hallmark of the long fingers in Nosferatu is very creepy, and they look great in this movie with the long nails. Very frightening. He's got like 8-inch fingers, maybe. I don't know. They're huge. But I feel like Skarsgård was the perfect cast for that role. I'm glad he ended up where he did, and I'm glad that everyone else did too. Because, like I said, they were all great. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson, who I didn't even really talk about yet, gave another one of my favorite performances in the movie. The emotions he gives, especially in the third act, are so strong and heartfelt. I can't even imagine the pain his character at the end of the movie loses his two daughters and wife all in one night, and it's just a monstrous, cavalcade, a tsunami of emotions, and he's crying, he's tearful and somber, then quickly to anger, and he's shouting at Ellen, not Emma, but he's shouting at Ellen, and that delivery of that attack on Ellen verbally, I think, was one of my favorite moments of acting in the film as well. And then he's just a very interesting character. He's very suave, very fun and lighthearted. But then his patience draws really thin with Ellen's character the longer she stays there. So he's very emotive, and he's such a big part of the movie. I was glad he was in it so much because I do love Aaron Taylor Johnson. Everyone I know has told me that I'm biased for ranking his performance so high in the movie because I would put his performance as the third best of the movie. I put it Lily Rose Depp, then Bill Skarsgård, then Aaron Taylor Johnson, because I just really felt him in his character, in his element. He embodied that time period. The accent was great, and I feel like he was a lot of fun. And then I would put Willem Dafoe below that, and then Nicholas Hoult, but not in an insult to Nicholas Hoult, just in terms of everybody was performing at such a high level. I feel like being on that roster was like being on like the U.S. Olympic team for basketball. Like, the first person on the bench on that team is an incredible athlete, and everybody that came to Nosferatu delivered. The acting, the directing, the writing, the lighting, not unintentional rhyming, the music, and it was just really strong in terms of the craft of filmmaking. The story is a little bit dated, but they just made a phenomenal movie with so many great iconic scenes. I don't want to drone on for too long and bore you guys talking about specific scenes. I know I've touched on a lot of specific scenes, but I really enjoyed, and now I probably moved this up into potentially my top 10 of the year. I have to look a little bit more, and you can talk about this in our Discord too if you want to. We've been doing a lot of, everybody's putting their top 25 in, so you can join our Discord. It'll be in the description below from this video. If that link does not work, because it only lasts for a week if you're watching this later, go ahead and comment or message us in our DMs, and I'll go ahead and send you guys the updated link to the Discord. It is absolutely free, and we can get in there, we can chat and mix it up, talk about Nosferatu or movies, TV shows, comics, and more, whatever you guys want to talk about. It's a good community in there, but a lot of people, I'm sorry, I should say, one person specifically in our Discord was talking at great length with me, McNeil, about this movie, and he also really liked Nosferatu. So I would recommend checking it out. I'm about to be running to the streaming services and watching every other Robert Eggers movies I can get my hands on immediately, because I really love the craft of filmmaking and the approach to this movie. Both visually, in terms of the storytelling, was very interesting, despite it, like I said, being, by its nature, predictable and dated. But they put a really cool spin on it with their little touches and telling the story the way that they did visually. I really appreciate you guys clicking on this video and watching it with me. I hope I'm not forgetting to say anything important about this movie. I think I've touched on most of the important aspects that we touch on. But I'm very much looking forward to watching this movie again. Please make sure to check us out on all of our short form platforms. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. We're all over the place. We don't really post on X, to be honest, but check us out on there. We post short form content every day on all the other ones. You can join in the Discord, like I mentioned, and make sure to share us with friends and family, because that's the best way to help the show grow organically. Leave a comment below. Make sure to hit the like button, the notification bell, and the subscription button. And that'll be all for now, folks. I look forward to seeing you on the next one, and that's a wrap.